Recording, okay.
I will do it. Because of the continuation of the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being held electronically over the Zoom platform. It is authorized by the county's declaration of local emergency, the county's continuity of government ordinance, this authority's resolution, and Virginia Code section 2.2-3708.2 subsection A3. The public has real-time audiovisual access to this meeting over Zoom and real-time audio access over telephone. Everyone on the phone and attending via Zoom from the public is in listen-only mode. The following instructions apply to those who wish to speak during public comment. If you are listening on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature to notify the meeting facilitator. For those joining by telephone, please use *9 to indicate you would like to comment. Tell the board your full name and the magisterial district in which you reside before getting into the substance of your comment. If you don't know your magisterial district, provide a general location for your home or business. The street location or neighborhood name will suffice. Each speaker will be allowed no more than 3 minutes to comment. This meeting is being recorded and it will be made available on the county's website. So with that explanation, I ask the board members to identify themselves and their general location, and I'll do that by roll call. Let's see, Bucky Walsh.
Bucky Walsh, I'm here and I'm at my home in Albemarle County.
All right, Waldo Jaquith.
I'm here at my home in Stony Point.
Trevor Henry.
Present in my home in Albemarle County.
Bill Fritz.
I'm here. I'm at my home in Charlottesville.
Supervisor Palmer.
I am here and I am at my home in Albemarle County in Ivy.
And Supervisor Price.
I am here and I am in beautiful woods outside of Scottsville, Virginia.
All right, Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Very good. Then I'll call this meeting to order. And our first business item after that was to approve the agenda. I would like to suggest a change to the agenda that was distributed. Item 10B, that should not be approval of Abavade provider agreement. It's simply receipt of or discussion of Abavade provider agreement. We're not going to vote on anything with regard to that. Is there any objection to that change? Hearing none and seeing none, we'll take that as change. Any other changes to the agenda? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Very good. So we'll take that agenda as amended. Now we go to brief announcements by authority members. Anybody have anything? Waldo.
I have one. This is just the abundance of caution category. I have accepted a position as senior advisor to the administrator of the General Service Administration for state, local, and tribal and territorial government. Because the U.S. General Service Administration is in charge of procurement for the country, and because of the nature of my work, it is possible that there could be a conflict of interest. I don't know what it would be. And if there was, the federal agency's Office of Government Ethics would be on me real quick about it. But by the time we convene next month, I will have taken that position. So I will do my best to be cognizant of the possibility of conflicts of interest, but I tell all of you so that you could do likewise.
Thank you, Waldo. Anybody else?
Just congratulations, Waldo.
Needless to say, yes. Congratulations.
Very exciting.
And that takes us on to our public comment section. Although it sounds like I'm hearing someone's printer in the background.
That could be Supervisor Price's HVAC. That's my guess. Mine
No,
buzzes sometimes up there.
No, she was
Actually turned off at the moment, so it's not
Oh,
nor my HVAC, but it was
I got
from
nothing.
in the library with the candlestick.
Well, it stopped. Excellent. So public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak? Not seeing any indications of that. Okay. The next item is the approval of the July 28th, 2021 meeting minutes. Bill, did you?
I did not prepare them. They're not ready.
Okay. So we will not approve those.
That would be helpful.
And that takes us on to item 6. You know, at this rate, we will be done with this meeting in 7 more minutes. Next item is election of officers. This being our annual meeting, it is incumbent upon us to elect officers. We need a chairman, a vice chairman, secretary, and a treasurer. There are 4 incumbents in those offices, and historically I've pled with folks to speak up about wanting to take one of the roles. Let me come at this a different way. Is there anyone who would like a job they don't currently have? Is there anyone who's in a job that they currently have that they couldn't stand to do for another year? Then I move we approve. Oh, Liz doesn't. Fair enough. Then I move that we approve the current slate of officers for another year in their positions. And I'd love to get a second for that.
Seconded.
Second. We got lots.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There we have our new slate of officers. I'm sure there will be galas and balls all over the Charlottesville area to celebrate this.
Bucky, I have one question on this.
Sure, Bill.
Mike is the chief administrative officer. Does that have to be redone every year or not? Or is that just until undone?
Our incorporation materials provide for re-electing officers at each annual meeting, but don't say anything about an administrative officer.
I thought that was correct. I just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
Just like a regular company, once you make someone your CEO, you have to fire them to make them not that anymore.
Right.
Or they have to quit.
And I think that's consistent with the Virginia code that talks about the board being able to appoint a chief administrative officer. It doesn't speak to reappointment or reelection.
Thanks. I just wanted to dot all the i's and cross all the t's.
Thanks,
Thank you,
sir.
Bill. Thank you, Richie. A schedule for our regular meetings. That's item 7 on our agenda. We're currently meeting, what is it? The 4th Wednesday of the month at 5. Is that right? Or is it the 3rd Wednesday of the month? Feels like it's the 4th one. Yeah, 4th Wednesday of the month at 5. Does that suit everyone? Any suggestions for a different time?
As long as COVID persists, I'm available every night of the week and the month.
Then I move that we keep the same schedule for our regular meetings and establish that through the next year. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. There we go. Richie and Mike circulated a very slightly revised rules of procedure. Richie, did you want to highlight anything that was changed?
I'll do that real quick. So on section 2, in regards to attendance, there was a clerical error in the sense that this board had voted to not consider remote participation to be an absence. So that clarification was added. And that might have been my oversight, so I apologize. The other amendments, which are on page 5, section 8, they update the remote electronic participation to be consistent with the Virginia code. We don't have to do that. I think it's good to do it for clarity's sake. But you all were visionary enough last year to amend the rules to automatically adopt those changes. But that's the only one. The other change, the other change, which is consistent with Virginia code, is that it used to limit remote electronic participation for personal or medical reasons to two meetings. Well, for personal reasons to 2 meetings. There's no limit on medical reasons. And they also added if there's a family medical condition that requires you to participate remotely, that can be done. There's no limit on the number of those. But in terms of personal reasons for vacation, for business travel, that sort of thing, you had been limited to two meetings per year. That's been upped significantly by 50%. In the case of you all, to 25% of the meetings. So that would mean 3 personal meetings for remote participation. That's the other change that's in there. But those are just consistent with the Virginia Code.
Thank you, Richard. I move we accept these new rules as has been distributed. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Then those rules have been adopted. Thank you very much. That takes us on to our old business. Item A, the Body 2020 update.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start, and Derek Kelly has joined us as a panelist in case there's questions or information that needs to be taken from CenturyLink. So welcome, Derek. Glad you could join us this evening. The first thing that I'll bring up is the Body 2020 update. All 8 areas that were in the grant have been activated, and fiber customers are joining the CenturyLink connections and doing well despite the outages that we've had over the summer months, which is a constant, I guess. There's no way to protect against those outages happening. But it seems things are rolling along pretty well. I'll let Derek talk a little bit about the impact of the outages, especially in the southern part of the county where they successfully brought people on, and a week or two later after doing so, significant outages occurred. So Derek, if you want to address the board with some comments about Body 2020, glad to hear what you've got to say.
Sure. Thanks, Mike, and good evening, everyone. Just a quick update on the number of customers. I did get a little snapshot early last week, and we were at about 240 customers online. So we're probably somewhere in the 250 to 275 customers on the service out of I think 837 homes. So we're well on track to get everyone hooked up that wants service. I think the original business case we had looked at got to about 50% take rate in the first year or two. So I think we're well on target to do that. Just to address the outages that happened. So down in the Scottsville area, we finished up our last project was Green Creek Road, and then like Mike said, it was a week or two later, someone damaged one of our fibers and cut it, and it was a little bit of an extended outage that some of our fiber records. So, trying to identify what traffic's being carried over every single fiber. Some of those records were wrong that caused some delays in getting two things. One, it was getting the fiber restored, but also getting notifications to customers. So, we have some automated processes in place that if a fiber gets cut, what equipment is on that individual fiber, and it should trigger that equipment is down and has lost connectivity. But because some of those records are wrong, it ended up having a little bit of a trickle down effect where customers were calling for updates, and quite frankly, the systems didn't know that area was down or which customers were down, and it caused some issues. We've since corrected those records issues that, knock on wood, hopefully no one's cutting that same fiber anytime in the future, but if it does happen, hopefully we have our records correct. And then fast forward to the microburst that came through southern Albemarle County a couple weeks ago. When that happened, as far as our fiber goes, we ended up staying up and everything was operational after the storm happened, but it took down some of our fiber. And then the next day, as crews were doing debris cleanup, the crews actually ended up cutting or damaging one of our fibers where we had to go in and restore it. So it threw a little bit of a uncertainty, because customers like, well, we made it through the storm and then we had an outage the next day, and it was because those crews ended up, unfortunately damaging our fibers. I think we got it spliced back and repaired that night, but then during the evening hours, a car ended up going around some barriers where a road was closed and ended up driving over and crushing some of our fibers. So then we had to go back and do some additional repairs and replacements the next day. So it's been a little bit of a hopefully isolated issues with some of those crazy outages. Unrelated to Vadi, but on Mountain Vista Road, that same storm took down about a mile worth of copper, and we ended up, I think we're hoping to get it up either tonight or tomorrow and get everyone fully restored, but those are copper customers just on Mountain Vista Road. We ran into logistical issues of being able to find that length of copper. I think between COVID and everyone else, just supplies are limited, so it took us longer than we would typically hope for to get copper in place and get it in town and get it hung back up and spliced in. But we're happy with the 250 plus customers we have online. I looked last week, we had about 30 orders pending in the system, either working on getting their drops placed or they had just recently called in and hadn't even gotten their drop tickets in place yet. So that'll, between that and what's already been installed, we should be up around the 300 number very quickly.
Thanks, Derek. That's all good news, except
Yeah.
for the part where you lost service.
How many people are still out from the storm? Derek, do you know?
As far as I know, is related to actual outages. I think Mountain Vista Road is the only one that I'm aware of, is the customers right on that road.
Okay, well, we've just been getting an awful lot of emails about outages lately, so hopefully those are going to be all taken care of pretty soon.
I think that word gets thrown around a little too loosely. I mean, there's definitely individual customer issues as every storm goes through, and lightning can do damage either, you know, on a widespread basis where it takes out a piece of equipment, or copper or the electricity runs up someone's drop. And, you know, we have some protectors on the side of homes that hopefully absorb any of those lightning strikes. But when that happens, they end up losing service till we can go and replace those inside guts on the side of the house. So it's not to say we don't have individual customers out of service on any given day, but as far as outages, that's the only one I'm aware of.
And one other question, is most of this all fiber that's up on poles? Because I know that you guys buried a significant amount of it, as far as I could tell.
Yeah, for the Vadi project, most of it was buried. There were some places we ran into rock or had issues going underneath creeks where we ended up putting it on some pole lines. But then just our network in general, we have some in the air and some on the ground. So it wasn't the fiber right on Green Creek Road, as far as I know, that was torn down serving individual customers, but it was some of the fiber that's back feeding to some of our other equipment.
Yeah, thank you.
Donna has her hand up, and then I'd like to ask a question of Derek. Donna?
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. First off, I want to publicly express appreciation to Derek. You have been very, very responsive every time that I or others have reached out to you. And I want to publicly state that because I know that there is a lot of frustration by many people in Southern Albemarle with relation to broken service from CenturyLink. But I think publicly it's important to let people know that you and those that you work with have been as responsive as I think you possibly can be. Having said that, we still have some frustrations with corporate CenturyLink in the sense of the service not being as reliable as we would like it to be. The other thing I'd like to publicly acknowledge is Derek emailed today to let me know that he and another representative from CenturyLink will be participating in a town council meeting in Scottsville on Monday, September 20th. And so I really appreciate your responding and CenturyLink having a couple of people there to help work with the customers down in Southern Albemarle to try and resolve these issues. So I just wanted to say thank you, Dave.
Trevor, I think you're up next, and then Liz.
Yeah, I just also want to thank Derek for being willing to be on these meetings, to provide information to staff as emails and questions come in, and certainly for the Scottsville meeting coming up. I do think some of the concerns that I've seen in many emails is around the customer service interface for those residents that have an outage. And you know, I'm not a CenturyLink customer. You know, I can relate it to Dominion Power. When we lose power, there's, you know, I'm able to go through my app. I can call in. I usually get a confirmation of the outage and an estimated time of return of service. may not always like the answer of that. What is CenturyLink doing with the system that you have to really address that, to help manage help manage expectations on recovering from outages? Can you talk a little bit about, what that system is and how it's performing, please? Thanks.
So, and just remind me if I didn't address any of it. So a couple things, and I think I've had this talk with Mike just offline about differences between electric grids and sort of either a DSL network or a fiber network. We've talked internally. I used to be in CorpCom, and we talked a lot about, should we have some outage maps, or, should we do any widespread blasting when we have outages? And certainly, if we have something where the entire state of Virginia is down, or the eastern US, some crazy outage that is big and widespread, and we can say, hey, our internet customers here are having issues, we're on top of it, we're working on it, because if that happens where it's something widespread, we don't want everyone being frustrated and having to call and all of a sudden wait times spike up to an hour or 2 hours. One of the challenges we face with smaller outages, if we were to say, hey, customers in Scottsville are impacted by an outage that happened last night, and we're working on it. And so what happens if that outage is only impacting 100 customers in eastern Scottsville, and then some customer 3 miles away from there ends up having some unrelated issue, maybe lightning came up and damaged something, in their drop or whatever it is, then that person goes, oh, well, they're working on it, so I just won't call in. Well, then, a couple of days goes by and they're still frustrated. So, we do want those customers to still continue to call in. Now, I think some of I talked about it a little bit, but that notification process during one of those Scottsville outages, I think, failed miserably because our records were just wrong. So, what actual was riding on top of that fiber was just incorrect. And so then it wasn't triggering, and the right customers were part of that outage. And I think that's where a lot of that frustration came from, is because people were calling in and not seeing it. I've heard of some other instances where someone calls in, and if we'll use Mountain Vista Road for an example. So if one of those customers calls in and places a ticket, their individual ticket in one of the systems will show that it's canceled. Now, if they call into a regular rep, or I won't say regular rep, a rep that may not have as much knowledge on the system, they see, hey, your ticket is canceled. But what they should see is that it was canceled because it was grouped into that outage ticket. So, for the X amount of customers on Mountain Vista Road, instead of them having individual tickets that are flowing to technicians, we want, just the techs that are working on that cable issue to have that grouped as one. And so sometimes I've seen that cause some frustration, because they either get, they look on our website, we have a Where's My Tech feature that, should give you a status of your ticket. And sometimes I don't know what it actually shows in there. I'll see if I can follow up with our teams when that happens. But that's why the idea of, hey, my ticket got canceled, is usually it got canceled, but it's grouped into that larger outage ticket. And I think that's where some of the frustration has come from. The other thing we have coming down the pipeline is converting over to quantum fiber. So the Buffalo Hills project ended up converting over to quantum fiber a couple weeks ago. So if any new customers in Buffalo Hills want to sign up for service, instead of going CenturyLink.com or going and calling a CenturyLink rep, they can go to q.com and sign up under quantum fiber. I don't know, because we're just getting those customers signed up. I have not seen personally what that outage notification process is there. I know that platform was built specifically around fiber to the home customers. So all of our other systems have been, legacy telephone ordering, billing, engineering systems that we've then since keep continuing to update for DSL and then update for fiber to the home. Whereas Quantum, we sort of got a new system that was built from the ground up with a digital platform in mind. So, think about shopping on Amazon. You don't call Amazon and tell them you need a refill on paper towels. You just go to an app and do that. And that's sort of the digital experience we're trying to build with Quantum Fiber.
Can we move on to Body 2021? Oh, Liz?
Well, this could be a question that could go with Body 2021. I'm just curious to hear from Derek, given that CenturyLink is clearly regional, and there's a lot of money coming from the state, federal government for ARP money. There's a lot of talk about not having enough workers to bury fiber or put it up on poles or whatever. Does CenturyLink have employees or a standing contract, or do you foresee this competition for people to actually do this work as something that's going to be a problem for CenturyLink going forward over the next few years?
No, so I see, I've seen other companies in the press have talked about that. I think some of the smaller carriers definitely could run into some resource issues. Our president of our consumer division actually addressed this topic in the media a couple weeks ago. And then I was talking with one of our senior vice presidents over our engineering and construction team for the US and asked her that same question. I think it was last Friday. And she still feels like we have enough diversification when it comes to suppliers and vendors that we should be able to muscle through whatever demand is coming down the road. Now, it's not to say there may not be spikes and stuff that cause some delays. The ice storms that happened back in Texas back in the spring continue to have a trickle down effect on issues or items made out of plastic and PVC. So, you know, we have seen some delays where we can get that stuff in a couple weeks. All of a sudden it's taking 2 and 3 and 4 months for that to come in. So you think about all those terminals along the side of the road, you know, having delays on getting those type materials. So it's not to say we won't see, you know, peaks and valleys with some of that, or intermittent spikes and delays and stuff, but we're trying to get all that stuff ordered with enough lead time going into body 2021 that we don't run into any issues with that.
And you feel like you have enough people power to actually build the system that you're trying to build?
Yeah, we feel
As
good
far as
about
the
our
workers are
Correct.
concerned. Yeah, okay, thank you. I'm done.
Then Vadi 2021 it is.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for all the good questions for Derek on 2020. And I know we have a large contingent of 2021 future customers online with us as attendees. So to bring the board up to speed on what's happened with Body 2021, there are 10 project areas. DHCD has executed what they call their contract with us. So the Broadband Authority has a signed contract with DHCD, and DHCD approved the budget. Now, there are a lot more rules about Body 2021 compared to 2020. So we will be managing this with a closer look and trying to make sure things are done in a more efficient and effective manner and staying on schedule. That's one of our goals for 2021. We have a preliminary schedule, and one of the items that we've brought up to discuss with CenturyLink is how do we interact with the future customers, and we've decided to work directly with the company itself. You know, there's going to be a transition. CenturyLink will move on to become Apollo Newco sometime in the future, maybe as soon as June. So that transition will have to be handled very carefully, and keeping the future customers of one of those two companies, whether it's a CenturyLink customer who becomes Newco or they come online directly as Newco. And I'd like Derek to sort of address that. How are we going to make sure the future customers, fiber customers, know which of the, now you would consider 3 companies? Is it CenturyLink Lumen? Is it Quantum Fiber, as Buffalo Hills became, or will it be Apollo Newco? So Derek, I'll turn the microphone over to you and let you explain what's going on with Body 21. Thank you.
Sure. First, I'll start with the good news. So if you look at our original project management timeline, it had us launching our first site, which is going to be the Jones Mill Road area, at the end of December. And then the plan was to do Old Garth Heights by the end of January, followed by, let me make sure I get the right one, Tillman and Merriweather at the end of February. So I got an update from our construction teams today. The plan is to start getting some plows in the ground next week with Jones Mill Road, and to have it launched by the end of November. So that would be 1 month ahead of time. And then for us to launch Garth or Old Garth Heights, as well as Tillman and Merriweather by the end of December. So that would put us a full 2 months ahead of what our schedule was that we had released here a couple months ago. So comparing that to VADI 2020, we really didn't get plows in the ground and really doing earnest construction till it was like October, November timeframe, and really hitting our strides running in December. So most of the project ended up being built in a pretty short time frame. And I've talked about it in prior meetings, some of the issues we had with just putting those jobs out to bid, getting those jobs out of the engineering phase and into construction is where we ran into the most amount of issues. So we're well ahead of schedule on that. I've mentioned Glenn Butler's name before, but he's doing a good job from the engineering perspective, and he's going to be project managing these through the ends. He's done a good job, and excited to get 3 of these projects online by the end of the year. And then I've communicated with a couple customers. So we have 10 main project areas, but when you think about our Box Holly Taylor's Gap project, as well as the Campbell Cobham Stony Point area, those are large projects. So we're not going to go and launch all those at one time. When you think about Campbell Cobham Stony Point, that area alone is as big as VADI 2020. So there's, I think, 900 homes in that project. So at some point we will be breaking that in smaller projects and be launching those in phases as well. So we'll keep everyone updated as we start breaking out that time frame. As far as the Apollo questions from Mike, all of our talking points that we've developed with Apollo have been, as far as broadband grants, everything's just business as usual. So everything from executing on grants that we've already committed to going and applying for more grants. So, the next round of VADI is going to be applications are due here in about 2 or 3 weeks, and I anticipate seeing us submitting some grant applications in other counties, and it's going to be full steam ahead. As far as, at what point do people switch and become either a CenturyLink customer, a Quantum customer, or whatever the NewCo is, all that stuff's to be decided as we work through some of our IT plans. As far as the brand goes, so Apollo is the company that is purchasing these 20 states, but I don't anticipate that the customers are going to be Apollo customers. So at some point in time, I expect Apollo to make an announcement on what the new brand will be. We're excited about the transaction. So they ended up announcing 3 former executives from Verizon that launched their FiOS across the nation are coming to lead this organization. And so, just reading all the headlines and the FAQs and statements we've received from Apollo, I'm excited about what it's going to mean for Virginia.
Any questions? Good. Then, Mike, can we move on to VADI 2022 planning? Mike, you're muted.
Me unmute. I'll promote the Firefly folks to panelists, so bear with me. I'm moving as quickly as I can. And let's see. I think I've got everybody there, and David Blunt. So David, thanks for joining us. I will add you in too. So really appreciate David coming on to be part of the team. So please accept my panelist promotion. Thank you too, Derek, for being online this evening. Really appreciate the help there. So 2022 is exciting, really exciting news. The governor's announcement has really made its way through the General Assembly, and the funding provided for VADI does have a little bit of a different feel to it, because there's the ARPA funds that are part of that process, and any award will have to adhere to the ARPA rules. So we're building a team. We have a great team already at the county who knows how to manage the ARPA type funds, and prior years of VADI give us good feelings that we'll have a good role there. However, the VADI 2022 application is a regional application with 12 counties participating, and the Planning District Commission will be the lead applicant, with Firefly as their co-applicant. And I have a PowerPoint, or one of the folks from Firefly, if you guys want to do that, I can either bring it up and move it across for you, or just let me know what your preference is, and I'll turn it over to you all. How does that sound? Do we have any of the Firefly people on? That's the first big
All right,
question.
yeah.
Yep.
You hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I was on the phone for audio, and when you switched me to panelist, I think it decided it didn't like the phone connection. So I apologize for that.
No problem.
If you do the slides, that's fine. We can just, there aren't many, and I'll just ask you to advance them if you want to display them.
Okay, will do.
And I think Melissa may be hanging out in the audience somewhere if you want to make her a panelist in case she wants to add something later.
Okay. So everybody see the initial slide here?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, let me go back to my Zoom platform, and I think she was promoted. Anyway, let's keep rolling.
Good. So our project, we titled the Regional Internet Service Expansion Project so that we could get an acronym that was easy to remember because it was too long a name to keep repeating in all of our meetings. So we have the RISE project. And if you want to go to the second slide, we'll take a quick look at the overall project area. Is that
Mike, we're not seeing the second slide.
We also need it in slide mode.
Yeah, you may need to do enable editing when it pops up. The little button. And then into slide. Yep.
Mike, you're on mute.
Let's see.
Mike, you're still on mute.
I have unmuted. Okay, so.
You want me to just try to display it, Mike?
How does that look?
We
We're not
see your
seeing it.
email.
Oh, there we
Oh,
go.
there it is. Got it.
Very good.
Is
All
that the
right.
second? Is that the second slide or the
That's the
first
one
one?
we're looking for. That's the second one. And that's
Okay.
just the overall.
Okay.
picture. So the dark blue area is the Central Virginia Electric Service Area. And that's already been committed and will be finished out by next year with fiber to about 40,000 locations over a 4-year period. If you look, the light blue area is the RISE area. The yellow areas are areas where we received Connect America funds and will also be building as part of this project, but they are not part of the area that we're requesting funding for. All right, the next slide well, one other takeaway from this one. You'll notice that out of those counties, first of all, Albemarle is physically the largest, but it also has the largest amount of area, although there are pockets in Albemarle. When you look at the total numbers, we have a few more folks in Louisa that get connected, but Albemarle is clearly the second largest area in terms of the number of passings eligible for VADI and in terms of the project. All right, let's go to the next slide. And here's Albemarle. And again, the dark blue area is the Central Virginia Electric Co-op area that we will complete our construction on by mid-year of 2022. So they are not included in the RISE project. I noticed today that we have a few poles left in Schuyler for make-ready work. We've completed the make-ready work last week in our Red Hill area. Whitehall we had already completed. So the next step in all of those areas is to get fiber on the poles. We're well down the road and should easily make the deadline next year. In fact, I expect the areas in Albemarle to generally be finished before mid-year. We'll probably be in Amherst, Nelson County as we get to mid-year and be finishing up.
Gary, can you just tell us what the no color portion is?
The no color is served. So anywhere in the area without a color generally has Comcast or Ting or CenturyLink fiber, or they have DSL service that is providing speed higher than 25 megabit per second and higher than 3 megabit per second upload, 25 megabit per second download.
I recognize this is not a very detailed map, but I will tell you just from glancing at it that some of the areas that have DSL are not getting 25. So I'd love to see a more detailed map. Because I have
All right.
constituents in there that are definitely not getting that, including myself and my
All right.
neighborhood.
Well, I will be glad to touch on that as we go through. And those
Okay,
little
thank you.
circles that make it Swiss cheese are the DSL areas around the phone switches. And so there are little carve outs there close to the phone switch. That tends to be, well, because of the way DSL works, when you're closer to that switch, you're more likely to be able to receive that speed. So that's how the carve outs occurred. We actually have this very detailed. So on our system, it is household by household. And we look very closely at exactly where the lines are. The way that construction will actually occur in a number of these areas, and let's take up Route 29, for instance, where there are several beach lines. We're going to be building on the electric poles. So we have to build through that area. We will not seek body funding for it, and we will not spend any public dollars in those areas for any connections, but we'll have fiber go through there, and then we'll offer service in those areas as well. So it's there'll be service to some additional potential subscribers beyond the folks in the body areas. And that may cover your concern, Supervisor Palmer, about instead of getting to a point of arguing whether or not they're served, if we are challenged for the grant, we took out what we thought were likely to be able to receive that speed, with the assumption that we're most likely going to be in the area and offering service in here.
Gary, thank you for explaining the Swiss cheese. That helps me a lot.
Yeah. So then the other areas, there's some carve outs. We've carved out the body 2020 and body 2021 areas that will have service. We've carved out the Connect America Fund areas because they aren't eligible. We will still build those at the same time. And we've carved out the those DSL areas. And again, we have a very fine resolution on this when we're looking at it. We did our survey. We used information that the county had done, and Albemarle was way ahead on this and provided great information regarding feedback from the citizens that were unserved. Then we also had a survey that ran a little more than a month, and we had a significant number of folks who did speed tests for us online or provided information about their ability to get service if they had already requested this from incumbents. And we used that to help design this. So we expanded in a number of areas that we thought were served, and we pulled them back in to show them as unserved. And we also carved out some areas as served where we found that there was service that we hadn't anticipated. So we spent some time really refining this, and we feel like this is a pretty accurate map. None will be perfect, but that's the area that we're looking at to serve. Again, we'll be on electric poles running through it, so we won't run to the edge of this and stop. In many cases, we have to run through a served area to get into these areas. And if you don't have any more questions, I'll go to the next slide.
Can I get you just to, I'm having trouble hearing you, and I up to the volume as far as I could. Could you just tell one more time the circles, the Swiss cheese that clearly others could hear because Bucky commented on that.
Well, I apologize. For some reason, when I am on certain virtual meetings, my microphone doesn't pick up very well off my computer, which is why I was trying to use the phone, but that didn't work. So let me try to get closer to the computer. The Swiss cheese, the circles, are circles around the area of a phone switch, is the easiest way to think of it. So it's a central point on the phone network from which the DSL signal starts. Generally, we know how far the DSL signal can carry on copper lines and provide a reasonable speed. And we carved out the areas around those phone switches where people are likely to be able to receive reasonable speed on DSL. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. So that's why they look like circles, because we could have gone in and tried to follow which way we thought the copper lines were running, but the easiest way to identify it was to use those circles. All right. Any other questions on the map before we go to the next slide? Mike, can we advance slide? These are the partners in the project. We will be partnering with Dominion, and in their area, we'll be using their middle mile program, which allows Dominion to build fiber along its backbone lines and major tap lines and lease it to Firefly. We will take it from that point and build lines out to the individual homes and along the smaller taps. So that's the approach in the Dominion area. In the Rappahannock electric area, Rappahannock will own the fiber. We'll be in charge of making sure it's constructed. We'll be using our own team of engineers and contractors to build it, but Rappahannock will own it and lease it to Firefly. So our Firefly's relationship with Rappahannock looks a lot like the Firefly relationship with Central Virginia Electric in terms of leasing the fiber and providing service. And then Albemarle County is a partner because of all the support you've given, plus we're asking for funding. And the Thomas Jefferson Planning District, because we wanted to use a regional planning district for the as a lead applicant because of the regional nature of the project. All right, next slide.
Hey, Gary, just a question on the coordination of the project with Dominion and Rappahannock, since it's a dependency. And maybe that's part of your slide deck coming up, but I'd be interested in knowing just how that will work with those utilities as it relates to the overall schedule.
Actually, this is a good slide. Let's touch on that. And I didn't talk about the Appalachian Power area, where Appalachian doesn't have a formal partnership with us, but Firefly will be building fiber, and Firefly will own the fiber on the Appalachian Power poles. So let me talk about the way each of these will work. In the Dominion area, we will be dependent on Dominion to complete their work before we can start our work. So in that case, we will work closely with them. In fact, I was just on a phone call with them at 4 o'clock today, and they're going to start design in the Albemarle area in October. And they'll start some of their field work. They anticipate that they will be approved by the State Corporation Commission, but they'll have to wait till that formal approval before they can actually put fiber on the lines. Well, that's not completely true. They can put fiber on before, but to be assured they can recover the cost through their rates, they need to wait for the commission approval. So with Dominion, we will be coordinating with them. They will build that mainline fiber and bring the fiber down the pole and hand it off to us about 11 or 12 feet above ground. At that point, we'll either build aerial along their poles to more taps, or we'll go underground. So we'll be coordinating with them, and they'll do part of the construction. With Rappahannock Electric, Rappahannock is taking care of what we call the make-ready work, so that they will be working with us and coordinating to make sure the poles are ready for fiber to be installed. But Firefly is heavily involved in the project management of that overall project, and we are responsible for the selection of materials, the contractor and the design firm for the fiber build. And Rappahannock at that point will write the checks for it, but they have assigned that responsibility to us for the fiber build. So we have more autonomy in the Rappahannock area. And we'll still have to work closely with them because of their need to get the make ready done. Then on the Appalachian Power poles, Appalachian Power will be doing make ready work. We will provide them information. They'll make the adjustments on their poles to prepare them for fiber. And then again, we'll use our own design crews, contractors to build the fiber. So there's 3 different types of approaches, and there are different interdependencies. There's an advantage in some ways to this. Rappahannock area, we have to build in the power space. We don't have to, that's what they've chosen to do. It's a little cheaper. That takes a different type of line technician than the line technicians who work on the Appalachian Power poles, who work in the telecommunications space. So there'll be different crews. When we do a lot of work underground, like we will in the Dominion areas, that's another set of crews. So there'll be a diverse set of crews, which means we'll be working in several areas at once with different crews and not have to wait to finish an area with Dominion before we can move into an Appalachian Power area. Did that answer some of your questions?
It answered several of mine, but I have one more. Is there a definition of middle mile for what Dominion is doing?
There is not. I can tell you middle mile is a term that is used often in the internet business, and it has a broad range of definitions. So in Dominion's case, they are looking at it as, well, let me tell you what it actually is. It's dark fiber that we will lease from them. They will build fiber optic cable on their poles. They will not provide any light into it. There won't be any lasers. They won't have any data moving of their own. They will just lease us a piece of dark fiber, and we will tell them we want to start at the pole in front of Ms. Palmer's house, and we want to run to the pole in front of Mr. Henry's house and come off of it. And they will lease us that section of fiber. We will put electronics in to put the signal in at one end and then to take it out at the other end.
So if they have buried lines on a lot of their secondary roads, on those situations, that may or may not be a middle mile.
They will follow their power lines. So if they are leasing us along those underground lines, then they will put their fiber in underground and lease that to us, and it'll pop up at a box next to a transformer.
Okay, thank you.
All right. But they will not run all the way to the house. That's what they consider the last mile. They will stop at a street level. And if you're down a side street, they may stop out on the main street, and Firefly has to run the fiber down the side street. All right. Any other questions? Let's go to the next slide. So here are the numbers. We start by just showing the number of electric accounts in each of the 4 areas with Appalachian and Central Virginia, Dominion, and Rappahannock. So you can have an idea of the level of total services. I will tell you that there are many, many more in pro rata share of unserved customers in Appalachian Power, and it was in CVEC, than there are in Dominion or even Rappahannock. I think we end up with about 750 unserved in the Rappahannock area out of their 2,100. And then Dominion, it's a much smaller percentage. The total unserved passings that we have identified that are eligible for VADI funding is 6,046. We will be building 649 miles of fiber to get all of those connected. The total construction cost is $47,505,000, and that's a high number. And I'll get back to that in just a minute. Firefly, Rappahannock, and Dominion together will be doing just under $28 million of investment. And then the body request, which is based on a couple of different things, depending on the types of passings they are, comes out to a little over $15 million. And the county request is at $4,368,000. And that's using $750 a passing is how we came up with the county request. And that balances us back out at the end to a level that gets us to a per passing investment of about $3,100, $3,200. And that is the level of investment that Firefly rates can support at our standard rates. That's how we came up with these costs. Now, let me go back and touch on why the total cost is a little high. And that's because Dominion is in, and Dominion has very high costs in their construction techniques, and they understand that. Those costs are not all passed through to us. Some of that is absorbed in their middle mile program through their electric rates because they also use some of the fiber themselves. So with the combination of the advantages of the middle mile program reducing Dominion's investment and the body request and the county request, we can reach that point we need to be able to make sure that it at that $3,100 per passing range, when we get to a 60% take rate, we reach break even on with our rates. Our rates, I don't have a slide in tonight, but it's $49.99 for 100 megabit per second service, $79.99 for gigabit service. We've been getting 50 to 60% take rates this past year, but we're dependent on getting to 60% to reach break even at those rates. We make money once we get to 70% or 80%, and at 70%, we're making about a 5% margin. But we think it's important to be able to keep the rates low for affordability, particularly in the rural areas. And that's one of the reasons that we asked for the grant support that we did. So this is an important screen with a lot of numbers on it. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
When you said that there's a per passing investment of $3,100, I assume that's that's the entire cost across CVAC, across VADI, across the county, and not the amount that will be borne by VADI or by the county. Is that right?
So the 3,100 is actually what Firefly is able to bear out of our revenues. So if you take the 6,000 passing, the 3,100 brings you to about 18 million. It's about 18 million that Firefly can support. So
thank you.
Yeah, which is why those other the body requests help us get down to that level, because that's what we can support from our rates. But you can see the actual passing here is over 7,000 to start with, if you include the big Dominion number. Any other questions? All right, next slide. This is just the timeline. The application's due the 14th. The challenge period then runs through October. In November, we have a chance to respond to challenges, and they'll make the awards by mid-December. For Dominion's area, they will file for the State Corporation Commission approval in January or late January, early February, and it'll take them anywhere from 3 to 6 months, depending on that approval process, but they'll be working throughout that time to do the field work and maybe even start fiber construction if the project lingers on the desks at the State Corporation Commission. They may be able to start up a little bit of it. They did that before with the middle mile project that they had this year in some other areas. We do not need to wait for Rappahannock or for Appalachian Power areas. And in fact, we can start even earlier, and we can talk about that separately. But that's the timeline for Dominion. Overall, the construction would begin based on getting a body announcement in December. You can assume a month or two, get a contract with Thomas Jefferson Planning District, another month or so to get a contract with Firefly and Rappahannock and Dominion, and the counties, all of the agreements in place so that construction would actually begin sometime toward late spring, mid-year. The other word of caution I put up here for people who haven't been around fiber projects is when we say start of construction, that doesn't mean that in April or May we would be connecting people, because it takes about 6 or 8 months from the time we start construction in an area until we actually have connections. And then it'll be a rolling process. We'll start connections as soon as we can, and we'll keep making connections until we finish. We've committed to finish all of this by 2025. We're going to finish it as early as possible because we have every incentive to get people on as quickly as possible and start recovering that big investment we have out there. Any questions about the schedule?
I have one. How do you foresee, do you believe you have the workforce to follow the schedule to actually get this built? What challenges do you see there?
Well, certainly it's an aggressive schedule. We have built lines across 4,500 miles of our electric system. We'll finish up next year. It'll be a 4-year project. And in the first year, we built about 300 miles because it took us a while to get our feet under us. It was the first time we'd ever been in this business. So we've ramped up and we're building 900 to 1,000 miles a year right now with a local contractor who's headquartered in Louisa. His crews will become available to work on this project as they finish up the Firefly Central Virginia electric project next year in spring and toward the middle of the year. So it's a good transition for them. That gives us a workforce capable of building about 900 to 1,000 miles a year. So that puts us in a pretty good position. In addition to that, all of those crews are capable of doing work in the power space and underground. We can add crews to build in the Appalachian Power area that we have not been able to use on our system. And SNN has a number of those crews who can build in what we call the telecom space. So they have access to more crews they can bring in because of the lower level of skill that's required when you aren't building up near the electric lines as close. So we feel comfortable. SNN feels comfortable with the ability to retain their crews. They also use some subcontractors. We feel good about our position in terms of labor and in terms of materials. We've developed a close relationship with our material providers. We have had very few issues with supply chain. They've been able to help us work around it, and we already have plans with them for the fiber we need, and you need to have plans several years in advance because there are long lead times right now. But they have our plans to run all the way through this project already, and they've made a commitment to make sure that we have that material. So we're comfortable that we can stay on schedule in terms of material and labor.
And one other question, can you share the more detailed map with Mike so that we can take a look at that if we need to.
Absolutely. We will send him what we call a shapefile that will, you can look home by home at what's in it.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions about the schedule? All right, well, I think that wraps up our presentation. I said it would be short. And I think we do have one more slide that had a proposed resolution, perhaps, but I'm sure that the county has, or not the county, in most cases, the broadband authority at Albemarle has a proposed resolution that may be different than this one. This was our slide, and I know that Mike and Richie have been working on this. So I'll be glad to take any questions, talk about our capabilities or our partners' capabilities or their commitment to it. I will say that even though Appalachian Power is not a formal partner, they have made a commitment to work much quicker than usual on our project. They have set up their own internal project team, and we've already started working with them in Nelson County. And they've committed both a project manager to the engineering side and a project manager on their make-ready construction. And they've shown a commitment to get ahead of our fiber crews and stay ahead. Now, it's a big project. They'll have a lot of construction to do, but I'm pleased that they've jumped on board as well as they have. Certainly with Rappahannock and Dominion, we have good relationships and have calls weekly, and we'll continue that throughout the project. And I'll be glad to take any questions.
Hey, Gary, this is Trevor. Great presentation, great information. Good news. Our board of supervisors at their last meeting approved another $1.5 million, which will get appropriated next month. So our broadband funding will be just above what the estimated participation number is for the county. So it's always nice to see those numbers work out. Not for today, but I do have a question as this would move forward around just generally how you will communicate to the broadband office, to ABBA, but more importantly, from a construction perspective, what's your methodology for communicating out to the public in the areas that you'll be working? Again, I think that's a detail that we can address later. I am curious, and I don't know if it's David or you, how are we doing on the application? And, we got a due date coming up here on the 14th. Anything that you want to reflect on about that? Thank you.
Absolutely. And I don't mind touching on the communications plan that we have, which we've developed over time with the Central Virginia Electric Project, and refined, and we think it'll work well for us in this project as well. And then I'll touch on the application. Melissa and her team do a great job with communications. We will typically have 3 to 4 mailings during the construction period to all of the citizens in an area. So we'll announce an area. We tend to announce probably 6 to 8 months of schedule at a time or ahead of time. We don't like to get much further ahead, because if things change that require us to change the plan of where we build, we don't want to disappoint somebody who thought we were coming. So we'll announce 6 or 8 months ahead of time. Then we mail to every household to let them know that we're going to have contractors working in the area pretty significantly for the next 6 months. We talk about what each type of contractor will look like, the trucks they're in, how they'll be marked, what types of IDs they'll have, and what their work will generally consist of. In the first case, we're going to be doing field investigations, and Appalachian Power is a good example. Appalachian Power doesn't have really good detailed information about where their poles and meters are. So we will have people driving through, going to every house, going to every pole, getting a GPS location, and determining where the meter is on the house, which means we're going to be in backyards, we're going to be in places where people might wonder what we're doing. So we send communication ahead of time to let them know, and to let them know that that's part of the fiber project. The next crew that comes through will be doing the make-ready work. That's an Appalachian Power crew in the Appalachian Power's case, but we partner with APCO and we send a joint letter that says now they'll be doing work. You may have short outages because they may have to move your transformer on the pole. You may see people in the field at an unusual time of year, those types of things to warn people. Then we'll tell them when the fiber contractors are coming through. So again, they're aware it's a different type of construction. And then they'll get a mailing from Firefly saying now's the time to sign up for service. So they will get 3 or 4 mailings in every location. We also have a website that keeps up the schedule and the information, and we'll be providing it to the county regularly. We'll be glad to do it monthly to ABBA and keep you as up to date as we have information about where we're going to be and what we're doing.
Thanks, Gary. That sounds like a great process. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. We actually have people who, by the time we send the email to sign up, we'll open our website for sign up before that. By the time we invite them to sign up, half of the people have already found it and signed up because of the number of times we've contacted them. Now, in terms of the application, we've been working on the application. We've been really focused in the past month, as you can imagine, with the 12 counties, on defining these final areas and refining the cost estimates and working with the partners and determining what the project looks like. The piece of putting the application together, now that we have that information, has been underway at a light level in the background, but we have an internal target of next a week from today, on the 1st of September, we will have our first draft internally of the application. We will not necessarily have all the appendices put together, and that's a good number of screenshots and different things. So we're comfortable that it's coming together in time. We're meeting with Department of Housing and Community Development staff every week. We were meeting every 2 weeks, and last week we changed it to every week. We met with them this morning. We have another meeting next Wednesday morning. Each of those meetings, we're going through any questions that have come up. We're asking about best practices for several aspects of the application. So I'm sure we'll be touching base with Albemarle to get some further input and some support. We'll also be reaching out to the school system and to some of the important businesses and those types of things to get letters of support. But we feel pretty good about the way that it's developing at this point.
Hey, Gary, may I ask one more question? I don't know if others have questions. Don't want to hog the questions. But this isn't necessarily a fair question for you, but you've been so wonderfully detailed in all your other efforts here that I'm going to throw it out there. You said that Dominion had to wait for the SCC to approve the application to make sure that they could recover the cost through the electric rates. And that worries me just a touch, because that's always been the argument of electric companies getting into this business. And you talked to us very early in your process a couple of years ago about how it was not, the Firefly was not going to affect your electric rates. You know, there's equity issues with that. Do you foresee any problem with them getting their money back through the electric rates? And are they getting federal money or state money at all for that through the ARPA money? Do you know?
It's an excellent question, and I'll try to stay out of the political realm and just give you the facts. Because I have views on it also, but those aren't, they don't need to be discussed here. The middle mile project with Dominion started as a pilot idea a couple of years ago. The state has clearly seen the need for rural broadband and understands the benefits of having partnerships with utilities. Dominion was willing to take on some of the responsibility or some of the opportunity to build fiber but they wanted to make sure that they did not bring a lot of risk on to their shareholders or their operation. And so the middle mile program gives them some surety. It also does recognize that there are some benefits to Dominion. They were building fiber and in fact continue to build fiber in other parts of the state that go out to circuit breakers, regulators, things that are down the line away from substations that they need to communicate with. Using the same concept, they're building more fiber into areas with middle mile and leasing it to the rural ISPs. So I don't see actually by state law, the State Corporation Commission has to allow them to recover that. The judgment the SCC has to make is if they're serving unserved areas. So that's a big part of that SCC review. And DHCD actually does a review of that through a program that they have called the Utility Leverage Program. We will be submitting an application with Dominion that'll include Albemarle and say, here are the unserved areas, the same map as VATI. And that decision should be made before they even go to the SCC now. It used to be made only by the SCC. So I think that will also facilitate the review at the State Corporation Commission. And the way that it's set up is it assures Dominion that they can get recovery of that cost for the fiber. Then what we pay them in a lease is essentially offset against what they're getting in rates, and it lowers what they would need to get from their ratepayers. So it's an interesting process. It does give them a backstop in that if they don't get the full amount for their lease, then they are assured to be made whole from their ratepayers. But it's a process that has been put in place by the state, and I do not have a concern about whether they will get it passed in this area and we'll be able to build. And some other day we'll go out and have meet at a vineyard and talk about what I think about that.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a good explanation.
All right.
Are there any other questions? Gary and the Firefly team, thank you all very much. This has been illuminating. Let's move on to the Treasury report or financial report. Trevor, you spoke to this just kind of sideways a few minutes ago, but maybe you want to clarify for us.
Sure. At the very bottom of the agenda, meeting agenda is the monthly report. It reflects the addition of the $3 million that was appropriated by the board earlier this year and has been moved over into our broadband fund. The board did take action as part of an ARPA work session last week and nodded approval to another $1.5 million that will get appropriated. I believe it's scheduled for September 1st, and Mike's head's nodding in the affirmative direction. So that should be reflected by our next meeting. There still is a noted payment for VATI 2020 that is in progress. Mike said there's still a few dots that are being I's being dotted and T's being crossed on that with CenturyLink. But I do think other than the $1.5 million, it reflects our current state.
So the total amount of dry powder or uncommitted funds that we would have would be 4.5 million with an extra $1,867 for the after party, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Something to that effect. Thank you.
Good. Good. Well, that brings us to, are there any questions for Trevor? I'm sorry. That brings us to item 10A, which is the approval of a resolution. Now, Richie, a question for you. Did you have a form of resolution you wanted to offer, or should we use the one that the folks from Firefly have provided?
I thought I have done one, and then Mike finished it, and I thought he circulated that.
Mike, do you have that, and can you put it up? Whereas.
Yep.
That looks like
is
it.
That is it.
Thank you, Mike.
It basically reflects what we saw in the prior slide. Thanks to the folks at Firefly for putting this together. This is the responsibility of the Broadband Authority. So we create this, or the ABA board creates the resolution, and this is an approved. This is the staff recommended resolution to approve participating in the regional body 2022 application. So
Mike, as long as you've got it on your screen, you want to read it out loud to us, and then I'd like to see if there's any discussion and call for a vote.
I can do that. That's exactly a great opportunity for me to exercise my vocal cords. So here goes. Hopefully everybody stays awake. Whereas the Albemarle Broadband Authority, the authority, consistent with Albemarle County's FY 2022 strategic plan, is committed to bringing universal broadband internet access to its citizens across the county within the next 3 years. And whereas Firefly, Fiber Broadband, Dominion Energy, and Rappahannock Electric Cooperative have developed a regional internet service expansion project with the Thomas Jefferson Planning District as the lead applicant, including the authority being one of the multiple public bodies serving multiple localities included in the project to make fiber to the home broadband internet service available to the unserved locations in Albemarle County. We should remove that but that's okay. Whereas the preliminary planning for the regional project has identified 6,046 locations in Albemarle County as being unserved without access to speeds faster than 25 megabits per second download or 3 megabits per second upload. And the preliminary design includes 649 miles of fiber optic cable to be installed in Albemarle County to make service available to those locations with a cost estimate of $47,505,000 for the construction. And whereas the breadth of this project in Albemarle County and across the other participating jurisdictions creates a need for additional grant funding to make the project financially feasible. And whereas this project will seek grant funds from the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development through its Virginia Telecommunications Initiative with an application on or before 14 September 2021, and local contributions to the project will strengthen the regional application by earning it additional scoring points. Let's give me a pause here to page down. All right, work with me here. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Albemarle Broadband Authority commits to participating in the regional project and fully supporting the application, including providing local matching funds not to exceed $4,368,000 subject to appropriation. Here's the motion. If someone else wants to read the motion, I think that's appropriate, right?
Let's see if there's any discussion about that before we go on.
Right.
Donna, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. A minor ask in the second whereas, where the regional internet service expansion, should those 4 words be capitalized and in parentheses put RISE?
RISE, very good. Yes, good catch.
Oh, thanks. And other than that, and deleting the B that Mike mentioned, I would be, after any other discussion, I'd be happy to make that motion.
Liz, you have your hand up?
I'm wondering about the exact amount of money there. What if it comes back a little bit different from the state, the 4.3, whatever it was, I don't see it in front right now, $1 million, since we appropriated 4.5. Is there a problem if it is slightly more than that?
It makes sense to me that we would appropriate an amount of money, and if we need to change that amount of money, then we would appropriate a new amount of money.
Okay, so we can easily change that. I just didn't want to, run into a situation where we had an exact amount and something came in a little bit more than that. So I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't an issue.
I don't think it will be. Any other questions, comments?
Can I make the motion?
That'd be great, Donna. Mike, could you scroll it down a little bit for us?
Yep. Will do. There it is.
So now you get to hear my reading skill. I move the Board of Directors to adopt this resolution, committing it to participate in and fully support the joint regional application for Body 2022 grant funding to achieve universal broadband accessibility in Albemarle County, with the Thomas Jefferson Planning District serving as lead applicant, and to commit local matching funds not to exceed $4,368,000, subject to approval.
Is there a second?
Second,
Thank you, Liz. So I'm going to call the roll on this one, so we have it recorded. Liz, how do you vote?
yes.
Waldo?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
Donna?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries. Good job to everybody. This is a huge step. Yeah, I feel like having a party.
Yes, sir. Thank you all so much. Thanks to the Firefly and CVIC team for putting all this together. And thank you, David Blunt, for working on this application. Really appreciate all the hard work that's going on, and anything we can do between now and the 14th is we're at your beck and call, or at least I can say I am. So just let me know how I can help and I'll be there for you. Okay. Thank you, board. Really appreciate all the support to get us this far. It's really nice to read the resolution. So really hit home reading it. Makes me happy. Thank you.
Okay, Mike, would you stop sharing that?
You read very well too, Mike.
And the last item on the agenda is simply to advise you that we have a body provider agreement, assuming such an award is made, how we will engage with Firefly. And it's something Richie's going to have a look at, but I just wanted to put it on the table now so that over the next month or two, as we get closer to this process, it's everyone has an opportunity to get familiar with what we'll be signing on for. And that's it in that regard. Are there any other points of business, questions, or comments that we should take up? Yes, Liz?
I have one more. At our last meeting, Waldo had talked about talking to Rich Schuyler about doing something with PVCC on the workforce issue. It's one of the reasons why I asked everybody that was here that question. I'm wondering if there's any follow-up, on that, if you had a chance to talk with him, or if anybody else should be talking to PVCC in some other fashion, if that should be TJPDC or whomever.
Mike was kind enough to nudge me about that and connect me with Ridge. And so we have an email exchange going that we, of course, now must turn into an actual meeting to see if there's some way that we can work together. So I hope I'll be able to provide a reasonable update at our next meeting.
All right, thank you.
Oh, and thank you for your series of questions about that too, because I had the same questions and I really appreciated it.
All right, thank you.
You know, normally I like to move these meetings along at a brisk pace, but we were taking up a very important topic tonight. And I want to make sure everyone had all the time they needed to address every question and hear every comment. Any other business? Well, seeing that there is none, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you all very much. And good job, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Let's get some dinner.